All right. I think I got the title updated. We're doing a lit review today, except to present on Monday. Um, so I have two papers that I want to review in mind. The first one is this one. This is pretty relevant to what I do, which is predicting HTX uptake from protein structures. So, from what I understand, I briefly read this like probably a couple of weeks ago, and they kind of take the diff, the they take so ultimately I want to predict residue level hydrogen deuterium exchange. You could kind of approach that from both ways. Either you have like experimental data and you deconvolute the peptide level uptake into residue level um, observables. And that's what this paper does. My approach is I take the protein structure and I predict from features that you can derive from protein structures um, into residue level uptake. So, you know, maybe ultimately to solve this problem, you kind of have to have approaches from both ends. So that's kind of why this paper was kind of interesting to me. And I should probably write that down in the slides, what I just said. Uh, so this split review. I always like to have a blue, like a light blue. Yeah, looks nice. So insert new slide. It doesn't have to be very pretty. Can I apply this? Yeah. It's very like low key, sort of. It's just like um, for my group. So no, I don't think this was published yet. Yeah, it's in preprint. Okay. So I already have a folder created for lit review. So here's what I'm gonna do. First, I'm gonna download this. So this will be like REX save. Put that in there. So we stay organized. If we can put that right here. So these people are from the UK. Um, read this paper some time back. Real, um, you can predict residue level uptake from two directions, from protein structure or D or readout experimental readout deconvolution. This is the deconvolution method. Um, yeah, I can go into detail later, but Okay, let's start. So I woke up. It's one of those days where like one eye is blind and it's just gonna stay that way for the rest of the day. So that's awesome. Hydrogen deuterium exchange, powerful technique, bottom up approaches, use peptides to represent the average of residues leading to. Okay, use MS. Use, to. We introduced a method to infer leveraging overlap in peptides, the temporal component of the data, and the correlation along the sequence dimension. So they leverage the overlap in peptides, the temporal component of the data. It's kind of interesting. And the correlation along the sequence dimension. I don't really know what that means. Maybe like intrinsic rate of exchange. This approach infers statistical significance for individual residues by treating each as a multi-chain point problem. Don't know, change point problem. Don't know what that means. By fitting our model in a Bayesian non-parametric framework. Okay, I definitely don't know what that means. Okay, there's whole books on it. Do I watch a quick video? Beginner's Guide to Non-Parametric Bayesian Methods. Statistical methods to allow the complexity of a model to grow with the data. Unlike traditional parametric models, they use a fixed number of parameters. Instead of a finite number, these methods use an infinite dimensional parameter space to model complex relationships in regression, density estimation, and clustering. Huh, it's kind of cool actually. Adaptive complexity. So is this like machine learning? We perform parameter number inference differential HDX confidence assessments. Parameter number inference differential HDX, okay, and uncertainty estimation for temporal kinetics. Benchmarking against statistical models using a three-way proteolytic digestion experiment shows our method's superior performance at predicting unseen HDX data. Moreover, it aligns HDX methods with reporting standards of other structural methods by providing global and local resolution metrics. We analyze the differential flexibility of Bromo domains. Analysis reveals distinct residue level HDX signatures for ligands with varied functional outcomes, highlighting the importance of characterization to form action analysis. Okay, how long is this paper? So 34 pages. There's some pictures in there, so it's not hopeless. We kind of just want to distill down like the long short of it, you know. One method to explore HDMX. This rate is impacted by various factors. Solvent accessibility is fundamentally based on the concept of local unfolding, the numerous application characterization, the effect. The majority of HDX involve a bottom-up approach. It's widely employed strategy. One-line proteolate via non-specific protease, immobilized, usually yielding good coverage. Although the selection of protein can be tailored, inherent limitations to hence bottom-up HDMX leads to distinct scenarios that remain unaddressed by current statistical methodologies. First, combining information from overlapping peptides, to refer to as redundancy and replicates, lacks a clear approach. Second, instances where overlapping. I wish they were more specific there. Second, instances where overlapping peptides exhibit a mixture of protection and deprotection effects requires a means of resolution, which is currently unaddressed by somewhat arbitrary approaches, such as data omission. Ooh, called him out. Third, differences in length of peptides introduce interpretation issues, especially when contrasting modest, consistent effects along longer peptides against more variable effects on shorter ones. We refer to this phenomenon as length bias issue. Huh. So there's more consistent effects on longer peptides, and shorter ones have more variable. It's kind of interesting because my model, I can actually predict shorter length peptides better. But okay, projecting peptide level data is an apparent to the basically projecting peptide level data to residual is an apparent solution to the previous outlined challenges, and several strategies have been proposed in this direction. All right, is this really necessary to put like, come on. These approaches can be divided into non-optimization approaches, such as taking a running average along the sequence dimension, and optimization-based approaches where the model is developed and then fit to the data by minimizing the discrepancy between the model and the data. Yeah, that one's mine. I've actually heard of StudyMess. HDX Modeler. Yeah, that website doesn't really work. Where we at? Yo, buddy, followed you, got lit skills, and I would love to make friends. Be a fan and support Next with Squad if you wish. Support Next with Squad? What does that mean? Kindly, let's vibe. Dude, thanks for the follow, but you don't sound real. Such models incorporate physically relevant constraints such as prohibiting negative deuterium uptake. Yeah. Wait. Yeah. While a residue level model in principle could overcome the aforementioned issues, it introduces its own set of challenges. While residue level model, okay, the main obstacle is the underdetermination of an appropriate model, implying a scenario where model parameters outnumber data points. Yeah. Model parameters, well, actually, the surrogate model doesn't outnumber data points, so. That's a good good thing to mention in my paper. Further, HDX suffers from a more extreme form of underdetermination that cannot be mitigated by acquiring additional data. This arises due to the potential countless combinations of deuterium uptake for two adjacent residues, each with unit redundancy, as long as the sum of the uptake is consistent with the observed data. All right, I don't understand this. Further, HDX suffers from a more extreme form of underdetermination that cannot be mitigated by acquiring additional data. This arises due to the potential countless combinations of deuterium uptake for two adjacent residues, each with unit redundancy, as long as the sum of the uptake is consistent. Oh, I see. So it's degenerate solutions is basically what they're talking about. All of these drawbacks come exacerbated when one wishes to study multiple protein states and perform differential. Here it becomes paramount to associate a measure of statistical confidence to the results to avoid false positives. Currently, there is no appropriate statistical. Yeah, that is true. In response to these outstanding, we developed REX statistical method complemented by an associated software package designed to achieve residue. This combines a likelihood model, which models deuterium uptake per residue, with a prior change point model that permits correlations or jumps between parameters of adjacent residues. A likelihood model which models deuterium uptake with a prior change point model that permits correlations or jumps between parameters of adjacent residues. REX is a non-parametric Bayesian model for crook. Let's see what this guy got. This is in proteomics. Let's not get too distracted. Okay, I have to leave at like 2 hours. So, meaning it does not fit. Meaning it does not fit the number of parameters, allowing model complexity to expand with the quality and volume of data. Oh, it does not fix the number of. Okay. The Bayesian framework allowed us to associate probability distributions to pertinent qualities, such as model parameters, that are updated in light of data. This updated distribution, termed posterior distribution, allows us to quantify the uncertainty of our model's inferences. That's kind of interesting. Despite a number of computational approaches available to obtain comprehensive, is absent benchmark of such approaches. Yeah, that's true. Directly conducting residue level NMR has its own drawbacks, in particular low sensitivity, while EDT before its consequently comparisons leveraging different experimental forms are likely the only report on qualitative differences. Here we propose a simple and extensible benchmark using a triple digestion of cytochrome C. In this approach, we test the ability of different methods to reconstruct from unseen digestions. In this experiment, we expect the same underlying HCX pearls, but by using different peptide digestions to generate independent data sets allows us for critical examination. We first detail, we proceed to explain and perform benchmarking analysis. Subsequently, we illustrate how we use to evaluate resolution quality, as well as value consistency and structure prediction methods, such as AlphaFold. They got to throw an AlphaFold in there. The consistency is okay. Further showcase ORA's capabilities through a variety of examples and extensive simulations. Conformational signature analysis. That's interesting. What is that? Don't know what that means. All right. Designed as a versatile statistical method aiming to facilitate the inference of residue level, it accommodates multiple protein states, including mutations, whilst replicates and many time points are not strict requirements and we advocated for them. Incorporating additional replicates and time points, especially those spanning 3 or 4 orders of magnitude, not only helps but also enhances confidence to ensure consistency between peptides from fully deuterated controls. Okay. Spacing change point designed to perform sub-localization of HCX uptake. We posit the existence of a latent unobserved residue level process analogous to assumptions entailed by a hidden Markov model. For a given residue, there is a temporal uptake model parameterized as a mixture of stretched exponentials. Yeah, that's funny. It's actually like what I did. The mixture portions are learned during the inference process, enabling the model to better adapt without necessitating pre-specification. Given this model usually possesses an extensive number of parameters, regularization of the parameter space is performed by defining a model prior. The complexity of the inferred model is guided by the data, and thus we non-parametrically specify the prior model as change point process. Segments of residues are simply or necessitated job. This implies that the number of change points. While these qualities can be pre-specified, they are typically unknown, and hence we include these quantities. Yeah. So that'd be like if I had like a model parameter. So right now I set it to. I mean, I guess I could do that. I just have like a mixture of 4 exponentials. It's kind of like arbitrary. But I could set that as another parameter and learn that. It actually wouldn't be very hard to do. Or actually it kind of would, because it needs to have a fixed output. So I couldn't do something like that. But I guess that's one of the advantages of this. A prior Poisson process is employed to model the unknown random locations. Inference in Bayesian models typically employs Markov chain Monte Carlo to draw samples from posterior distribution of parameters by using the Markov chain. Posterior distribution of parameters. However, a challenge arises when adding or removing a change point which increases or decreases the dimension. Yeah. Therefore, we developed an MC-MC method that allows the Markov to explore while it's increasing and decreasing. The reverse jump, RJ, sometimes referred to as transdimensional MC-MC algorithm, facilitates such dimensional switching. This algorithm handles scenarios where the number of unknown entities is itself unknown. Yeah, that's cool. The intricacies are primarily in determining the transition probability where altering dimensions. Bridging the unobserved model to the data remains challenging. The observation model takes the residue level model and adds up the residue values from the exchange residues covered by the peptide to derive peptide level inferences which can be compared with the data. The residuals are posited to follow a Laplace distribution with the scale multiplied by the length of the peptide. This approach downweights the contribution of longer transference and more precisely permits them to be more variable. Or more interesting. Okay, so that's how you generate HDXMS data. So this method takes that data, measures the deuterium uptake, sublocalization using Bayesian change point. Okay. So model and inference. Inference of time points. Reversible jump moves. This figure's a little bit messed up, I think. An extensible benchmark for residue level. In order to assess, in comparison with other approaches, we devise a versatile and extensible experimental design to be straightforwardly independent, extended by all. Nice. I use that same thing, I think. Subsequent digestions and pulling performed. Generates different. See figure 2. Could I use theirs? I wonder, because this is on GitHub. This would be cool. my model, like from the jump, outperforms there, that'd be very happy. I doubt it though, honestly. This guy seems smart. Guys, as always, if you're watching this and you enjoy the content, please give me a follow. Here's my GitHub right here. Follow me on there, Twitch, YouTube. I stream on YouTube. I got a lot of cool stars, so if you're interested in this stuff, you can look through here. Okay. Tests. Do I follow this guy? Yeah, I do. Where's the cytochrome C data? They got issues. No residue resolve model for first 100 residues. Error with RX process. One first residue is not one. Oh, I know this one. Differing number of replicates in data sets. Yeah. Would it be data? What's that? Raw data, I guess. I don't think they have. I could ask him. CYTO. No. I don't think they have it. Torch. Alright, where was I? Oh, you unfold me. To computationally profile diverse approaches, residual uptake was initially inferred or for each model under consideration using data obtained. Subsequently, the remaining two digests were held out and rendered invisible to the model, establishing our benchmark as leave digests out experiment. Huh. Okay. So use cytochrome C, created the model on one pepsin, one digestion route. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Each peptide from the held out data was considered in turn. We predicted their deuterium uptake by summing the already inferred residue values, thereby obtaining their peptide maps from both predicted and observed data. To evaluate the performance of the model, we measured the deviation of predicted, with superior approaches having lowest error. This benchmarking technique is adaptable in order to compare. Despite a few months, yeah, that's true. Only methods that were or had open source software from benchmark. Additionally, it was imperative that all benchmark methods could report deuterium uptake, not merely differences or protection factors. Yeah. So they did pseudo inverse approach, least squares approach, weighted average approach, and approach based on fused lasso. They even touch the best inventor Scoto. Specifically, the weighted average approach calculates the residue weighted average considering the length of peptides, inverts a coupling matrix between residue and peptide level squares, minimizes the deviation between the uptake model and the user data. Expands on this, incorporating an additional smoothness penalty between residues. Further details on all approaches are given in the methods. Performance of each method under the benchmark analysis is presented in 3A, revealing it's consistently accurate, reasonable theoretic values. Furthermore, exhibited the lowest absolute MAD consistently out of the 6 of 8 examples, outperforming other methods, and only being less accurate than the generalized at one specific time point, 150 seconds. That's early. Detailed animation. Okay. Alternative training data and downsampling confirmed superior performance in the large numeric experience, outperforming the next best model with a lambda 5 across totaling 32 comparisons. I don't know what the lambda means. A second best method 80. So they actually got beat by something. Ultimately, the challenge of all methods is identifying the correct amount of smoothness. Okay. So this is the benchmarking results. We have median absolute deviation. So I guess the lower the better. Bootstrap distributions of median absolute deviation are reported for held out digest vested by experimental time point. I don't know, man. They're pretty close. Extracting features from REX. Having established that we extracted features from the model for subsequent downstream analysis. The current limitation. Why didn't they just do like an actual versus predicted plot, you know? It's cool that they're modeling uncertainty though. That's kind of neat. There's all the model details, which I'm probably not reading, but okay, let's look at this. Let's just do experiment. So I actually can do Cytochrome C. I think I have this like Google Colab. Maybe here. Yeah. So my rho is 0.887. R squared for the raw at least is 0.756. you know. And that's for like a linear like model, like completely interpretable. The rho is pretty high. Fractional is harder to predict, but you know. So I don't know if you did fractional uptake or raw. I think you probably did raw. Which honestly, if you did raw, then you should have better numbers, I think. Or he probably has good numbers. I just don't know how to interpret this. Median absolute deviation. Or in Turkey format. RAX is the lowest average error in 6 of the 8 cases. The percentage of residue level uptakes that violate uptake. Percentage of residue level uptakes. Deuterium uptake should be increasing or constant over time. The percentage of residue uptakes that violate uptake constraints. Uptake should be between 0 and 1. So that's B. Interesting. So this is just showing, yeah. Well, I mean, if you enforce monotonicity, then that shouldn't even, that's kind of, I don't know why they include that, honestly. The percentage of residue level uptakes that are monotonicity violations, so they're decreasing over time. Yeah. I mean, these are all things that you can enforce, right? Which one doesn't do that? RFUWA. I don't know why they have to display that. Deuterium uptake should be decreasing or constant over time. A summary of ranking of the methods in all benchmark scenarios. That's kind of a mess. Maybe this is why it's not published yet. In all benchmarking scenarios, all digest and time points. So it's just, this is the top across all the benchmarks. Even these other ones though have some improvement, you know, are better than the REX. Extracted features of model for subsequent downstream analysis. The current limitation of is the route absence of reported measures. RX outputs a scale and standard deviation parameter termed sigma and uses sigma to model the deviation of its uptake fits from the observed data. But I will say that this is just from the experimental data. And there's probably not a lot of experimental data to go off of. I mean, I have like 45 examples, but okay. So now he's going to go and attack interpretability. The current limitation is the route absence of reported measures of the resolution. Outputs a scalar and standard deviation parameter termed sigma and uses sigma to model the deviation of uptake fits from the observed data. Accordingly, I actually do this too. Accordingly, sigma is larger for more variable data. Hence, when we added additional standard deviations and noise to our Weisfeld sigma increase in a close linear fashion, this means that smaller indicate less variable data. Data quality and resolution. I'm not 100% sure about that. Because there's differences in what is it? Like back exchange and experimental differences that kind of determine the um, shifts, right? So like if you can cross, if you take two experiments, right, and they have like different temperatures, there's going to be like an overall, um, the distribution would be the same, but there's going to be a different level there. Um, so I don't know if it's a good viable global metric for data quality and resolution, but for residue level measured data quality, we propose an average reconstruction area and measure the model's ability to reconstruct the observed data. For a residue implies consistently suboptimal modeling for overlapping peptides. We propose a measure of the model's ability in reconstructing observed data at the peptide level. For a residue level measure of quality data, quality, I'm dyslexic, we propose a average reconstruction number, a measure of the model's ability Okay. Elevated ARE values for a residue implies consistently suboptimal. I still don't really quite understand this. So I bet they just take the residual and then map back the overall contribution of the residue. Let's see. Because I actually did use that as a benchmark, or not a benchmark, but a way to probe error on the per residue predictions. Consider and normalize the columns by the number. The residue level uptake is then the row average of the non-zero entities. This approach suffers from the same issues as other approaches. However, it is also over smoothness because it cannot quickly adapt to sudden changes. Oh wait, no, that's not. That's what I'm talking about. I think it's this. Oh yeah. Firstly, for each peptide, we extract the posterior mean from our model. Okay, so M being indices over, MC iterations. This is the prediction of the peptide from the model. Okay. Okay, so I think the way they're just averaging for each residue in a peptide, they predict, but they average the overall. But I think in reality, a per residue prediction you would sum. I mean, you could average, but I think there'd be a lot of degenerate solutions there. Because there's kind of like a countless number of ways that average can work out. But in a sum, like, you really need to find what residues. I mean, I guess there's degenerate solutions for that as well. But if you have enough data, then it will become less degenerate. We compute loss with the average. Yeah, I mean that's what they're doing. They're summing and then averaging. Oh, I'm stupid. Never mind. You need a sum to average in the first place. Okay. This is the prediction of the peptide for the model. Slight variations are of course possible in the modeled by deviation using the mean sigma. We can then compute the reconstructive error using the following formula. UI and okay, so you're just taking the difference between the two. To define the per residue error is what I'm interested in. We consider the collection of peptide and overlapping residue R. Then define the sign average reconstruction error. Okay. 1 over n sum L should be normalized by L. This is assigned TRE. Would be larger if the data are poorly modeled at residue and these qualities. TRE is important in the context because of several peptides overlapping a residue, all with the same direction of error differences, is then consistent to exclude the redundancy of the data. We can see that any of these qualities would be large if the data are poorly modeled at the residue, and these qualities give us an idea of which residue are contributing most to the error. I don't necessarily understand this. Because of several peptides overlapping a residue with all the same. I do plan on giving this paper to ChatGPT, so you could probably explain that. Or she, or it. I guess it's it. Implies consistently suboptimal modeling, significant variability in the value of ARE, highlights regions is highest in the same region of poorly modeled. Furthermore, these results are consistent. It's highest in the same region. Variability in the value highlights where, yeah, it's highest in the same region of the poorly modeled. Yeah, furthermore, these results are consistent. Okay. So they're showing here, what is it? Figure, oh, S2. Where's S2? Um, let's see. It's the cofactor. RC curves. Huh. So you can predict secondary structure elements, I guess, with HDX. It's kind of interesting. Oh, that's cool. So they're correlating confidence with solvent accessibility surface area. Um, Top left, secondary structure annotations for each model. High, low. I don't know what S means. Or no, that's helix, loop, yeah. Strand. Okay. What is S? Oh, no. Top right, accessible solvent area for the molecule. Okay. Bottom left, RMSD to crystal structure for each model. Okay. Does that include the variance? Bottom right, RMSD is a function of random. Oh, okay. I guess they're just showing stuff. Uncertainty and conformational. This looks like a mess. I don't know what this means. Department of Statistics. Huh. That's interesting. That's where he's at. That as the rename REX. Sorry. Okay. There we go. I do want to have the SI pulled up. Files moved or missing. Great. I'll just refer it back to there. Where were we? We're almost done. I need to think about how I feel as I'm reading this, because I actually am in this space, so I'm interested. But somebody from the outside will be probably very tired and exhausted reading this. So, but it reads well. Like, he sounds like a human wrote it for sure. Having established the accuracy, we extracted features from our model for subsequent downstream analysis. I already read that part. Yeah, so I was interested in residue implies significant variability of the value. Moreover, ARE is highest in the same region of poorly modeled peptides from benchmarking experiment. Furthermore, these results are consistent with adding additional variability to the data. Figure S2. So maybe I can see what, okay. Plots representing how adding additional standard deviations affect the quality measures. A. The added additional standard deviation in the inferred sigma value. Okay. B. Coverage plots showing the credible internal construction using average reconstruction area plotted. All right. Crucially, we then examined 4 previously published associating structure free. We define as relative. Though HX cannot simply be reduced to these qualities, we found correlations across several of these annotations. Our results are obtained by randomly resampling 1,000 times. We interpret fewer change points, fewer jumps as increased correlation in the sequence image. Although HTX results are obtained randomly resampling residues 1,000 times. Examining the mean number of change points for each of the structure features. Hence, the result is likely because of more stable hydrogen bond network. Helices tend to have more change points than strands, perhaps indicative of helices being generally able to concertina. Concertina? Is that a word? I think he just misspelled that. More readily locally unfolded. Again, parallel strands appear less stable. When considering mean uptake of these features, we find SA regions we achieve the median area under the curve. We're predicting secondary structure prediction. Okay. Ooh. That'd be a cool thing to do if my models predict secondary structure. You could actually pre-train the model on that. I don't know how that'd work actually. Secondary structure is kind of already a feature to some degree. It's not explicitly, like it doesn't have the answer, but I don't know. That would actually be like a cool project. That would actually be really useful for like teaching a course on machine learning for chemistry, predicting the secondary structure of proteins. That could be a fun project. I'll write that down. Coding. folder. I'll call it ML tutorial for secondary structure prediction. That way it's like explicit. Yeah, that could be cool. Residue resolve differential HDX. Okay. We're at 926. We're getting there. I haven't really written anything in here, but powerful technique. Details are often challenging or impossible to obtain. Having explored abilities, we then use to qualify difference from differential. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Calculates residue level property. Enhancing the interpretation. Given that HDX alone cannot currently deconvolute a binding site from conformational changes, we opt for an extensive simulation study to demonstrate. We performed 120 simulations, selecting a residue and then reduction of deuterium uptake. What? For all peptide coverings. Each scenario was repeated. That is not really a simulation. A simulation of what exactly? Challenges. Okay, so I guess they're like, I don't know what they're doing. The challenge of quantifying individual residue level difference arises from the need to account for the consistency or lack thereof among overlapping peptides. Models the residue at each protein state under study, comparing each residue's uptake with the APO reference state. Okay, so do they take the difference together? Well, yeah, they're not. It's from the experimental data. So they're not predicting, they're deconvolving. Subsequently, the total reconstruction area is the value obtained by summing the effect. Suppose 4 peptides overlap a residue, and there are different deuterium differences in random directions with consistent magnitude. Then their sum will be close to 0. In contrast, 10 overlap. Okay, I don't quite understand that. An illustrative analysis for 80% volcano plots representing the effect size. However, let's get this spatial context, which we reintroduce through line plots detailing effect size as a function of residue number. Induced a ripple effect where a clear protection effect is accompanied by a corresponding and adjacent deprotection effect. Averaging the effect over time. Okay, probability is. So, an example is shown, which comprises 1 week of simulations. Damn, that's a lot. As this confirms, our approach is well calibrated. All right. So I don't quite understand what that means. Bromodomains. Genetic readers. Conformational signature analysis. And we do uncertainty quantification in the discussion. All right. Yeah. To understand the flexibility differences, we triplicate 5 sampling time points. Is this data available? Might have already done it. Usually would say like deposited in Pride or something. Made it into Nature. Those are really long. Oh, those are seconds though. We collected triplicate presence. EMSO. Oh, they did the experiment themselves and then applied strong stabilization signal time point suggesting the molecule binding, forming additional bonds, reducing HDX. The effect endured over extended labeling times with minimal confidence, indicating global stabilization. Effect endured, minimal presented a more pronounced global stabilization. So to rationalize these results, we examine the structure of the small molecule in the binding pocket, meaning that it unlikely formed any bonds in the region given this selective inhibitor. Jeez. We hypothesized the BC loop. Okay. What's E? So, I mean, were they able to do it or not? Okay. I think they didn't get huge differences in their uptake, which I've seen before. Is this the difference right here? Are these the differentials? Okay. I want to understand how structural dynamics correlate with vivo pharmacology. Some molecules. Yeah. Given the large number of molecules performing pairwise comparisons was infeasible, thus we applied a multivariables. The uniform treatment of all states. What? Huh. Why would they? Okay. I don't get it. Given the large number of molecules, performing pairwise comparisons was infeasible. Thus, we and previous authors applied multivariate statistical methods. Conformational signature analysis were performed, whereby was formatted as a data matrix and treated statistically. Unlike previous analysis, are used to project the peptide data to the residue level and additionally quantify uncertainty. The uniform treatment of all states enabled examination of the conformational landscape spanned by the perturbation induced by ligands. We correlated this landscape with the in vivo determination. Wow. I think I kind of get where they're coming from. So they're correlated the landscape of differences in uptake patterns to the pharmacological properties of ligands. Wow. And how many ligands were there? The first three visualized with molecules color-coded. It's corresponded. Okay. This is hard to read. Lipogenic. Hey. I'm reading a paper. I have a lit review due Monday, so I have to read 2 papers. Uncertainty quantification of CSA. We've predominantly used points, but I think I'm about done with that. So I'm going to do this. Start working on the PowerPoint. So I always, for the paper that I was writing, I would go like, you are a scientific reviewer. Read this paper and tell me your thoughts. It would usually like destroy me. For anyone that's like writing, I feel like right now it's the worst time to get a PhD because no one knows how far they should use AI as for assistance for like a project. Everybody's kind of like on their own sort of trajectory with regards to that, and I think so. For me, like I was using it to like help me at least as like a peer reviewer to read the paper and to help me make edits and to comment on the overall validity of my research. One thing that I realized though was the models have like a superhuman level of context. So like it can read this whole paper and basically like hold everything, all the information in their memory at once. Whereas a human, as they're reading a paper and trying to understand its significance, they can't do something like that. They get tired, you know? So what the AI will end up doing is providing suggestions for improvement, but in doing so, it you could do this like forever, basically. Um, it won't give you like a that's good enough unless like you prompt it with like this conversation that I'm having with you right now, you know. Um, but literally for like I think it was like a week or two, like I was like going back and forth and like trying to get to a passable examination from AI, but it's not possible. Is what I'm trying to say. All right, let's see what this is. Major concerns. Yeah, major revisions. That's what it would give me. And it does that with every paper I've ever given, frankly. All right, so let's talk about this. So, RX. It's a Bayesian residue level that one parameterizes per residue uptake in a monotone kinetic mixture, stretch exponential, opposes piecewise consistent parameters along sequence via change point prior, and fits the model with RJ-MCMC. The observation model aggregates residue level signals to peptides and then uses a length-aware Laplace error. The paper presents a leave digest out benchmark on cytochrome C, case test, and R package. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Principled uncertainty, full posterior, clear emphasis on calibrated FDR. Physical constraints banked in, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you should do. Explicit attempt to handle longer peptide variants, reduce their undue inference. I have tried to do this before, where longer peptides have increased error. I forgot how I did it exactly, but I ended up not doing that. Just to keep it more simple. It didn't really make a huge difference. All right. Here's the scale for the Laplace distribution. All right, I don't really know what that means. Draw new signal parameters from the prior, which often leads to low acceptance. Yeah, it's talking about reporting all this other shit. I would agree with that they need more benchmarks maybe, but you could always say you need more benchmarks, frankly. And there's not a lot of data out there. Differential analysis papers sometimes reconstruct APO using ligand to define TRE. This could be asymmetric. Okay, great. Let's, so the first image I probably want to put in this paper would be kind of like maybe this. Like I want to try to understand this here. Can I fit this whole thing? Where's my thing? Insert new slide. So you need to capture people's attention, right, whenever you're presenting. The way to do that is with pictures. Just use pictures and then explain it. You have some text on there, but the less text you have, the better. Okay, let's start from the beginning and try to understand their approach from the ground up. This is a deconvolutional model. How did they deconvolve the data to residue level uptake? What is Bayesian change point? How are factors like time, overlap, and experimental conditions used here? How is peptide length considered? Keep it simple, but do not simplify. That was Einstein. Einstein. Precise terms. What's being deconvolved? Latent residue curves. REX assumes each residue has its own uptake, such time point curve, that is monotone and saturating. They model as a mixture of two simple kinetics, stretch exponential, Weibull type. I don't know what that is. Should we watch a YouTube video? If they got like a quick... Yeah, let's go for it. 9:50, I gotta leave soon, probably in like 20 minutes. What's a good video? This one looks good.
Welcome to Institute of Quality and Reliability.
That one's not good. We'll do this one.
Today we're going to use a Weibull distribution probability plot to fit a Weibull distribution to our data. So you can see up here, this is the equation we developed really in the first video. You can notice that it's the equation of a straight line with our y equal to the natural log of our random variable, and then 1 over b as our slope, and then this monstrosity equation as our x, and then the natural log of a as our y-intercept. So the first step we want to do is we want to plot y versus x. In this case, it's going to be the natural log of a random variable
So
versus
the equation.
this right here, this equation. So let's go back over and see what we have. So in the previous video, we looked at the exponential distribution, and you can notice that really, in order to fit it to the Weibull,
I don't like that one either. Maybe this one will be okay. Let's go for it.
Welcome to Institute of Quality and Reliability. Hi, this is Hemant.
Hi,
The
Heyman.
Weibull distribution. In this video, we will discuss basic concepts of Weibull distribution,
Oh, I hope that's not too
probability
loud for you
conditions,
guys.
effect of shape parameter, and application examples of Weibull distribution.
Was the video just low?
We recommend that viewers should watch our video on hazard rate before watching this video for more complete learning experience. This is part 1 of our 2 videos on Weibull distribution. In part 2, we will discuss some more details related to Weibull distribution, such as 3-parameter Weibull, B10 line, etc. Volodya Weibull described the Weibull distribution in a paper published in 1951. The United States Air Force funded Weibull's research to study applicability of this distribution. Many others have contributed to refine the applicability of Weibull distribution in live data analysis. The cumulative distribution function CDF provides the probability of failure capital F of t up to time t. F of t equals 1 minus e to the power minus t upon eta raised to the power beta, where beta is the shape parameter and eta is the scale parameter.
Okay.
Obviously, reliability at time t will be 1 minus f of t, and therefore r of t will be equal to e to the power minus t upon eta raised to the power beta. This is known as 2-parameter Weibull distribution. Occasionally, a third parameter is added when it is known as 3-parameter Weibull. Let us see an application example. Suppose a company manufactures tires for superbikes. The company has supplied 12,000 tires to a motorcycle manufacturer. Following video shows how functions f of t and r of t change with various values of shape parameter beta. The scale parameter is assumed to be constant at 8,000. Let us see how the functions f of t and r of t change as we change the value of shape parameter beta. This graph is plotted with shape parameter beta equal to 0.6 and scale parameter eta equal to 8,000. The red line shows the cumulative failure function f of t, and the green line shows reliability function r of t. We have also marked line t is equal to eta, that is 8,000. Now we will change the value of shape parameter beta and see how the graphs change. As we have not changed the scale parameter eta, the values of f of t and r of t at the marked line t is equal to eta remains same.
I want like a.
Okay, in this presentation we are going to look at the Weibull distributions. This is a work example featuring the industrial applications. In this case, it's the lifetime of electronic components. So, a certain type of electronic component has a lifetime that follows a Weibull distribution with a shape parameter beta equal to 2 and a scale parameter eta equal to 1,000 hours. Just notice that you can get varying types of notation for the parameters of the Weibull distribution. So here it's eta and beta, okay? Which may not be consistent, but that's just the way life is. But one book is different to the other in terms of notation. Anyway, what is the probability that a component will fail before 500 hours? That's the cumulative distribution function we need. Determine the reliability function r of t, which gives the probability that a component will survive beyond time t. Now, this is actually the complement of the cumulative distribution function.
Alright. I could probably watch these, but I don't know if it'll. Stretch exponential Weibull type. So this is a Weibull type. You know, it's not the actual equation, and a standard exponential. So I model it with the standard exponential. The mixture weight is learned, so the model can fit either behavior or anything in between. Okay. From residues to peptides. In the HCX bottom up, you observe peptides or residues if a peptide covers R of I, skipping the first 2 residues and 80 prolines. Oh, the first 2? That's interesting. Model predicts a peptide's uptake at time t by summing the latent residue uptakes. This is a deconvolution idea. Infer is best to explain all the overlapping noise model length bias. The difference between the observed peptide uptake and the predicted is modeled by Laplace error. If scale grows with peptide length, larger peptides are noisier / get downweighted. Practically, longer peptides are allowed more deviation and grow the type more fitly. What is the Bayesian change point model here? Piecewise consistent parameters. Neighboring residues often behave similarly. Codes this by assuming the kinetic parameters are consistent within segments of the sequence and can jump at change points. Um, does it define what a change point is? I mean, I'm essentially doing a deconvolution, I guess. Noise model length bias. Piecewise consistent parameter. Neighboring residues. Rex encodes this by assuming the kinetic parameters here are consistent with segments of the sequence and can jump at change points. I don't know what a change point is. What do you mean by this? Poisson process favor prior. There's a reasonable number of segments, but lets the data decide. Because K is unknown, the model's dimensions change as you add or remove segments. They are reversible. Propose a split / merge moves. Segments and sample. Rate and asymptote the kinetic form guarantees. Overlap redundancy. Overlapping, seeing the same residue must be jointly explained. This many equations from the same unknowns is what enables single state, multiple states. The Laplace error scale increases the peptide length. It's about where along the median the model lets. Okay, so does each residue have its own rate equation? That is aggregated across the peptide, or do we first have a rate equation for the peptide and then find out what residue changes with the jump? Was it jump point? Capture this without oversmoothing. Proposes prior that there are some unknown number of change points and it uses to add or remove them. Evidence for a jump comes from overlapping peptides. If peptides that cross residue R show inconsistent behavior unless you split there, the sampler favors the change point in R. How time overlap? let's see, provides cross checks. Most of the residue level kinetics change abruptly at specific sequences. So we have like something like this, and then we assign a rate equation for the entire peptide, or the entire sequence length. So this would be like a jump point here with overlap. Oh, okay, I think I'm starting to get it now. It'll say no. Residue first, not peptide first. Okay. Latent unseen layer residues. Posits a monotone saturating for each residue. In practice, residues are tied into segments by a Bayesian change point prior, so many adjacent residues share the same kinetic parameters. So yes, each residue has a curve, but with the segment, those curves are identical. Forward, seen, layer, peptides. Peptide's predicted uptake at time t is just the sum of latent residues it covers. There is no spatial separate kinetic equation fit for peptides beyond this sum. Time points constrain the shape. Overlap creates many linear constraints. The same residues influences multiple peptides, which is what lets the model deconvolve to the residue level. Multiple conditions. Where do change points come in? They're a prior. The number of locations are enforced jointly to best reconcile a peptide. You don't first fit peptide and then place change points. You fit the whole model and then using peptide data. Okay, so can you give me the order of operations starting from the experimental data to the optimized per residue predictions? Can you use equations to illustrate what is going on? Write a single paragraph summary at the end that is concise to describe the protocol see what it says to that. So I'm thinking, like, we have our experimental data right here. And then we basically like fit initially across the peptide by doing a sum of predicted per residue exchange across time, and then we look at like a specific segment and compute the error, and then from there we try to find the number of change points that lead to resolving the overlap. That's kind of like what I think, but okay. Peptides I, 1 to n, each covers a residue. Okay, time points, replicates 1 through m, observed fraction uptake, yeah, exchange count, sure. If applicable, normalize across runs using fully deuterated controls. Okay, latent residue level kinetics, residue first model. Each residue has a monotone saturating uptake, so make sure of stretch exponentials in a single exponential form. Okay. So this is the this is the single exponential, or maybe this is the whole. Okay, so this is the stretched exponential. That's like causes the stretching there. And then this is the single. So we have parameters for the stretching. It's essentially like the weight. The PR. I don't know what that does. BR. That would be like the rate across time, and DR. That's the rate for the single. So this is between 0 and 1. PR is between 0 and 1. BR is, yeah, you can't have a decreasing level of uptake. That makes sense. Okay. Sequence smoothing via Bayesian change points. Neighborhoods up and behave similarly. So that's like the core assumption right there, I think. So parameters are piecewise consistent across sequence. For oof, okay, I don't get this. Piecewise consistent across sequence. Where k is poise lambda is the unknown number of change points. Or in unordered positions. Oh God. Forward map residues to peptides. For each peptide I at time, the latent peptide uptake is sum over the covered residues. Okay. Likelihood, length aware noise, length bias. Observed peptide uptakes are modeled with Laplace error whose scale grows with peptide length. Full posterior. Inference. God, dude. This is like impenetrable, it seems like. One paragraph protocol. Start with preprocessed peptide uptake and coverage sets. Posit a residue first kinetic model. It's a mixture, but a forced piecewise sharing of kinetic parameters along using a Bayesian change point prior. Map residues to peptides by summation and fit the data form to jointly infer the number of location change point segment. Finally, summarize the posterior to obtain residue level uptake curves with credible intervals, plus overlap-aware diagnostics to fit quality and inform downstream differential or multi-state analysis. Okay, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. My trouble. So the core assumption here is that residues next to each other have similar rates of exchange. Is this really true? I get the stretched exponential. Piecewise sharing. I mean, I guess the Bayesian change point prior, like, accounts for that. Is there anything on the internet for this? Poisson counting process where events occur randomly over a period of time. You probably have a, oops. Oh my God. You estimate the rate at which events occur before. Okay. Seems like a good source of information. You have a sample of observations from a Poisson counting process. Maybe I can give it this and be like, rewrite this in the context of HDX MS. Answer this, but additionally rewrite this brief article, but in the context of the paper I gave and also HDX MS. Let's try and actually read this though. You probably have a chart that shows time in the horse and how many, okay. The rate at which has changed somewhere over that time. Okay. So this would be the frequency. Yeah. And then the frequency could have increased over some period of time. You have to estimate the rate at which the events occur before the shift. To do that, you apply Markov chain Monte Carlo sampling approach to estimate the population parameters for each possible k, from the beginning of the data set to the end of it. The values you give at each time step will be dependent only on the values you computed from the previous time step. So I know Markov chain Monte Carlo is used in like for modeling stocks. So it's like at each time point there's like a distribution of possibilities kind of. Like a good figure. I don't think there is one. Oh, here we go. Accept, accept, reject. Okay. Alright, let's see what it says. The model's prior says neighboring residues are likely to have similar, but it doesn't force it. If the data demands sharp differences, inserts a change point and lets parameters jump. In practice, local similarity is often, but not always, reasonable because adjacent backbone inlines share, where it is false, active sides, the posterior favors more shorter segments. So the assumption is soft data check prior, not a rigid rule. Okay. Written for purpose. The note demystifies how, in turn, borrowing the spirit of classic change point tutorials, the idea you measure deuterium uptake for many peptides several times. You believe that as you move across the sequence indexer, there are stretches of residues where the kinetic behavior is internally similar with abrupt shifts at a few positions. You want to find those change points and estimate the uptake curve per residue. Posits a latent to encode. Neighbors are often similar. So the parameters are piecewise constrained along the sequence, where the number of change points k and the locations are unknown. From residues to peptides, the peptide I covers residue R, skipping the first two amides and prolines. The forward map is the sum. The sum is a deconvolutional glue. Overlap means it's constrained by likelihood with length awareness. Longer peptides are down-weighted. Their sums over more sites, thus noisier. Shorter peptides anchor the fit. Posterior target put together. The posterior. Now we hop. You hop over a single time change in a Poisson rate. Here the hop is transdimensional because k is unknown. Reverse jump. Birth says death of a change point. Update sigma kinetics. Repeat building samples. Oh shit. When you get out, residue curves. Change point posteriors where model believes kinetics are truly switch. Relating to, is it local similarity true? Often yes. Helices, strands, bands, cores show correlated protection. Often no boundaries. The change point is prior is deliberately soft. Reversible jump. Explain what this is. From the perspective of a residue. From the perspective of the data point. I don't know if it means what I'm saying. From the perspective of a data point. I like analogies. Okay, I think I gotta leave them after this. One peptide at a time. Yeah. What you are in the model. You contribute one factor through a Laplace likelihood. Okay. Okay, I think I understand a little bit more. Your relative weight to others. So reverse in this sense means that we can decrease the number of change points. Please say yes. Or it'd be decrease actually. Okay. What the hell? Alright, that's a good place to stop, I think. So we got 2 slides. Sweet.